Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's daily devotional. So, our daily devotional today is going to come from an article that was posted. Let's see, oh, I didn't mean to do that. This was posted back on the 29th of November. And the title of the article is Study of 40,000 People Identifies a Key Personality Trait that Creates a Happy Family. So, notice 40,000 people were part of this study. We all want our family life to be as happy as possible, and now researchers have identified some of the personal characteristics and skills that are most likely to make for a harmonious home. One of the key factors when it comes to healthy family and romantic relationships, it would seem, is psychological flexibility. When challenges and problems arise, this flexibility can keep relationships from breaking down. The conclusions were drawn from what's known as a meta-analysis, or a study of previous studies. In this case, the meta-analysis encompassed 174 earlier pieces of research on relationships, covering 43,952 people in total. Put simply, this meta-analysis underscores that being mindful and emotionally flexible in tough and challenging situations not only improves the lives of individuals, it might also strengthen and enrich their close relationships. I'm going with Rogue, and his colleague Jennifer Dax, also a psychologist at the University of Rochester, found that mindful flexibility was linked to rewarding family and relationship dynamics, as well as stronger connections between the individuals involved. The researchers go on to specify some of the personal skills needed for psychological flexibility. These include being open to and accepting of experiences, whether good or bad, and having a mindful, attentive awareness of the present through daily life. So when they refer to being open to and accepting of experiences, in other words, when things happen, you whether they're good things that happen or bad things that happen, you recognize that they've happened. You don't go into denial or anything like that, and you say, okay, this has happened. Now I need to move past this and continue to fulfill my responsibilities or do whatever it is I'm supposed to do. And then having a mindful, attentive awareness of the present through daily life. Not getting caught up in the future, not getting caught up in thinking about stuff that's happened in the past, but focusing on the present. Other positive skills include experiencing thoughts and feelings without obsessing over them, keeping a broad perspective even in difficult times, staying in touch with deeper values through the fluctuating moods of each day, and being able to continue to take steps towards a goal even amidst difficulties and setbacks. So I thought that was kind of interesting that the positive skills that are involved here is not obsessing over thoughts and feelings, keeping a broad perspective, not getting bogged down in the details of things that are happening, but maintaining the proper perspective. Keeping in touch with deeper values through the fluctuating moods of each day. In other words, not letting your emotions get the better of you, and being able to continue to take steps towards a goal, even amidst difficulties and setbacks. In other words, there's a point, there's a reason for what I'm doing, and even when maybe I don't always meet the standard that I need to meet, whatever it is, then I'm going to try to get myself to be prepared to make the next step. It's quite a list of appealing traits then. Psychological inflexibility, on the other hand, typically results from actively avoiding difficult thoughts, feelings, and experiences. Again, basically denial. Going through daily life distracted and inattentive, and getting stuck by difficult thoughts and feelings. Other behaviors in the psychologically inflexible include seeing difficult thoughts and feelings as a personal reflection, and feeling judged because of them, allowing the stress and chaos of daily life to overwhelm deeper priorities, and getting derailed easily by setbacks and difficult experiences. In families, psychological flexibility leads to greater cohesion, not as much stress or distress, and a greater use of adaptive parenting strategies. In romantic relationship, it leads to greater satisfaction and less negative conflict. The research fits with a previous study run by Rogue, which looked at, or Rogue, which looked at how just being more aware of relationships and keeping communication channels open could make a significant difference in how long those relationships last. The results suggests that husbands and wives have a pretty good sense of what they might be doing right and wrong in their relationships. You might not need to teach them a whole lot of skills to cut the divorce rate. You might just need to get them to think about how they're currently behaving. So, obviously, I find it interesting and quite telling that when you go through this article, over 40,000 people, part of these, 170-something studies, and this is what they figured out. And out of all of this stuff, I mean, you think about some of the specifics, like they refer to psychological flexibility, being mindful, emotionally flexible through tough and challenging situations. All of these different characteristics, open to and accepting of experiences, whether good or bad, having mindful, attentive awareness of the present, all these positive skills that I highlighted. This is similar to one of the other articles that we looked at, in that when I think about these positive skills, I think about the fact that any positive skills of these that I know of in people they come from a religious base. It comes from the Bible. It comes from the desire to live a life that is right before God, such as experiencing thoughts and feelings without obsessing over them. Okay, being able to think about things, especially things that are difficult, things that have happened that maybe were traumatic or tough, and being able to address those, pray about it, talk to God about it, and being able to let it go. And that may not necessarily be a one-time, I'll pray about it and be done, but being able to continually just let things go. Having a broad perspective, remembering that we're heading to heaven, that's what our goal is. Staying in touch with deeper values, not letting our emotions get the better of us and causing us to not act as we should as Christians. Continue to take steps towards a goal, even amidst difficulties and setbacks. Obviously, our ultimate goal being heaven. And then you have, obviously the goals of fulfilling responsibilities that we have now. And then, of course, you have the opposite of it, not really facing things that happen, being in denial, ignoring things that have happened, feelings and experiences, going through daily life distracted and inattentive. One of the most mentioned attributes or calls to action that the New Testament offers to, whether it was Jesus preaching to the multitudes or it's the apostles, it's to be watchful. Over and over and over again in the New Testament, we are called to be watchful, to be diligent. And certainly the idea of going through life distracted and inattentive is the opposite of being watchful. Getting stuck by difficult thoughts and feelings, again, being able to let things go. And when people get so caught up in their own mind, that's where that you get caught in this loop of not being able to let things go. And that's where praying about it really, truly comes into play, and giving God our cares and our worries. And so, difficult thoughts and feelings is a personal reflection, like I'm not good enough, I'm not able to do this. Well, what does Paul tell us in Philippians 4, verse 13? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It's not about us, and no, we don't have the ability to do this on our own. But people without God, without faith, they would tend to be more reflective on themselves, and as a result would feel that they're not good enough. Allowing the stress and chaos of daily life to overwhelm deeper priorities. Obviously, that's one of the things that we talk about a lot as Christians, is making sure that our priority of serving God is not, that we don't let the minutia of daily life bog us down and cause us not to be focused on getting to heaven. Getting derailed easily by setbacks and difficult experiences. Obviously, especially as a Christian, there are going to be joyous times and there's going to be times of sorrow. That's the way life is. Sometimes bad things happen, and it's not a judgment of God saying that you've sinned. I mean, Job learned that. that Job stood by the fact that he had done nothing wrong. And obviously that is I think a problem that sometimes even Christians can fall into, is if something happens that isn't necessarily our fault, but something bad has happened to me or to a loved one, the thought process is, well, what did I do wrong? Obviously is God must be punishing me for something, and that's not true. Job, that's one of the whole lessons of Job. So, kind of connected to this, there's a Psalm 4, that I want to read. It's a Psalm of David, and I think it's interesting because of what David says here. It says, "Hear me when I call, O God of my righteousness. You have relieved me in my distress. Have mercy on me and hear my prayer. How long, O you sons of men, will you turn my glory to shame? How long will you love worthlessness and seek falsehood? But know that the Lord has set apart for himself him who is godly. The Lord will hear when I call to him. Be angry and do not sin. Meditate within your heart on your bed and be still. Offer the sacrifices of righteousness and put your trust in the Lord. There are many who say, who will show us any good? Lord, lift up the light of your countenance upon us. You have put gladness in my heart, more than in the season that their grain and wine increased. I will both lie down in peace and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety." Obviously, all of our Psalm 4 is all of it's an encouraging psalm in a lot of ways. It shows the conviction and the dedication of David, but especially verse 4 and 5, you can kind of see how Paul kind of either references or even flat out quotes to the Ephesians in Ephesians chapter 4 or 5, I forget which, when he says, "Be angry and sin not." Chapter 5, I think, at the latter end of chapter 5. "Be angry and do not sin." And then David goes on to say, so obviously, be angry and do not sin. We've made the case before, but when Paul makes that statement in Ephesians, that you're human. You're gonna have emotions and things are gonna happen, but that doesn't mean you lose control. You process what takes place. You maintain the proper control in your life. You don't allow your emotions to take over. Meditate within your heart on your bed and be still. He doesn't say go to sleep. He says be still. And I think there's a point here that David is making about with connection to meditating within your heart. And allowing, of course, part of meditating is thinking deeply, and we talked about that in the New Testament, but also the idea of prayer as well. But the idea of being still is to be at peace. Okay, not to be anxious, not to be worried, not to get all up in a fluff over things that we have no control over. Meditate within your heart on your bed and be still. Offer the sacrifices of righteousness and put your trust in the Lord. The Lord has set apart for himself him who is godly. The Lord will hear when I call to him. I will both lie down in peace and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. All of these characteristics, in a lot of ways, Psalm 4 kind of epitomizes the emotional flexibility and psychological flexibility that's being described in that article. The fact that David's faith was in God and that David was going to focus on serving him, that he had a goal. And no matter what happened, I mean, even after his sin with Bathsheba and then plotting to get Uriah killed, all of that, I mean, that could have been enough to completely derail David. And yet, as soon as Nathan said, "Thou art the man," David wept. I mean, David was just devastated. And he said, I've sinned against the Lord. And he recognized it. And what did he do? He sought to make it, to atone for that. Just as Peter, after he denied Jesus 3 times, he went out and wept bitterly. And then what happened? He comes right back and he's there with the apostles. He's there with the disciples. And in Acts chapter 1, he takes charge to help out with the things that are happening to replace Judas with Matthias and so forth. So it goes to show that it may have taken 40,000 people and 172 some odd studies for them to come up with this, but this is stuff we've all learned from the Bible. We don't have to have 40,000 people and 170 studies to tell us that having flexible or emotional or having a psychological or emotional flexibility is a key to a productive relationship or productive family. The Bible has taught us this. God has taught us this. So I think it's noteworthy. I mean, obviously, it's nice to see some of these psychological articles and so forth that just kind of confirm what we already know, that these characteristics are what help people. But the fact that these articles are being written shows how much those characteristics are lacking in our society. Remember, at the end of this article here, one of the purposes, I guess, for one of the studies was to figure out how to cut the divorce rate, because the divorce rate is so high, especially now during COVID. But what he says is you might not need to teach them a whole lot of skills to cut the divorce rate. You might just need to get them to think about how they are currently behaving. Yeah, that's true. But it goes to show, though, that when people, for instance, as Christians, we know that when we enter into a covenant of marriage, with a husband, with a wife, they enter into that covenant not just with one another, but with God as well. And there's a higher standard. It's not just each other's standards that they must meet. It is God's standard that they must meet. And when you know that no matter what happens, God is going to hold you to that standard, whether your spouse does or not, God is going to hold you to that standard. That creates an incentive and motivation to continue to do what you're supposed to do, to be and fulfill those responsibilities as God has commanded us. And certainly love is part of that commandment. Loving our spouse, loving God, loving our neighbor. And so a lot of these characteristics, all of these characteristics, really, every single one of the positive characteristics that we find listed in this article, as well as the negative ones, we are taught about to have the positive and not have those negative ones in the Bible. And we can go in both Old and New Testaments to see the examples of this. All right, so I thought that was a really interesting article, an interesting parallel to Psalm 4 and the rest of the Bible that shows us that, Christians, as God has established the pattern for Christians to be in their lives, Christians are psychologically and emotionally flexible, and they're able to deal with things better because why? They're able to give God their cares and their worries. They're able to get through these things. They're able to deal with people in a reasonable and loving way, and be able to deal with tough events when they happen. All right, so that's the daily devotional for you today. Hope that helps everybody. So we'll have another daily devotional tomorrow at 6:30. Lord willing, I'll see you all then. Thanks, everyone.